So, hello again, everybody. Welcome to the next in this In Dialogue series. And today I'm really excited to have with me Dr. David Hamilton, the author of 9, or is it 10 books now?
9. I'm on the 10th.
You're on the 10th. 2 handfuls. And I was really happy to meet David recently at the Hay House I Can Do It event in Birmingham. And I was lucky enough to hear you speak, and I was really struck by so many of the similarities in our work, and particularly you shared this wonderful, very funny story of your discovery of what you call the brain hack. You know, when we get into fear, flight, fight response, and all of our energy in the brain goes into that place and we can't think clearly. And what your research has led you that the best way to deal with that is to do a silly dance. Let's not take ourselves seriously. You then proceeded to do this fabulous silly dance across the stage. That was it, man. You had me there. I was in love. That was it.
Once I get going with the silly dance, it's impossible to stop because you feel so good.
I know how you feel. So I know you started life as a chemist, and you were working in the pharmaceutical industry. That's what I understand. The research that was being done on new drugs led you to really get fascinated in the placebo effect, and then from there to study the body-mind connection, and that's led you on quite a journey.
Pretty much, yeah. I started life as an organic chemist. That was my PhD, was organic chemistry, which has nothing to do with organic food. Because a lot of people ask me, an organic chemist, it's just, you really just take a bunch of atoms, carbons, hydrogens, nitrogens, and you stick them all together in the same way that a child might stick Lego bricks together. But instead of making objects out of Lego bricks, we make molecules out of carbons and hydrogens, and those eventually become the pharmaceutical drugs. So that was my background and training.
I tell you what, if my chemistry teacher described chemistry like that, I'd have been a hell of a lot more interested in it.
I find it really cool, actually, really interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I found it just immensely fascinating that when you're trialing a drug, the only way to prove that it works is to give the drug to a bunch of people, but give the placebo, a sugar pill, to another bunch of people. And what really astonished me is the numbers of people who make an improvement on a placebo. And I thought that was amazing, because when I was young, my mum had a postpartum depression, as it's often called. And when I was about 6 years old, after my youngest sister was born, and it wasn't properly understood in the 70s. In fact, the advice that one of the doctors gave my mum was to give yourself a shake. But asking a woman with that kind of depression to give yourself a shake is like asking someone with a broken hip to just keep running and it'll get better. Yeah. And so I found a book in the school library. It literally fell off the shelf when I was 11 years old. And it was called The Magic Power of Your Mind. And I thought that would help my mum. And I gave it to my mum, and it really helped her. It didn't cure depression, but it taught her tools and strategies like affirmations and meditation and stuff that could help her. And so I grew up in an environment as a child, hearing my mum say things like, it's all in the mind over matter, I can do it. Wow. So when I worked in the pharmaceutical industry, I'd been exposed to this kind of idea that the mind and consciousness is some powerful thing. So I became immensely attracted to the placebo effect. So that began to dominate all of my thinking. Even though I was a trained organic chemist, my main focus was on how the placebo effect works. How is it that the mind can have such a powerful and profound effect on the body?
Wow. Yeah, well, absolutely. And, it's interesting hearing you talk. I'm immediately struck. This is really personal, but when I heard you talk on the stage, apart from being very funny and very knowledgeable and drawing on a lot of really up-to-date research on body-mind connection, I also found you immensely kind in the way that you were working. And just hearing that story about your mum, I kind of go, right, there's a deep root in that kindness that I really felt from you. And yeah, it's beautiful. And in in our work, of course, we're working very much with the story we're telling in shamanism. We're especially these days, we're so focused on what is our perception of what's happening, and recognizing that perception is rooted in story. It's rooted in posture. It's rooted in really seeing the world through lenses that are from the past very often. So we're not actually seeing what's in front of us. We're seeing our expectation of what's in front of us. And we relate to the world in that way, and very often our expectations get met, whether they are expectations that are more in the line of suffering, or whether they're more creative. So for us, we're very we work with all of our students with this very clear sense of, look, our imagination is very powerful, and we're using it all the time, but mostly unconsciously. So we're in an unconscious imagination about how I am, how you are, how life is. And then that's having a massive effect on our perception of how life is. And if we can change the posture, if we can remind the body how it loves to move, how it loves to, how it was born to work physically, to dance, to move to rhythm, to chop wood, to be active physically. There is so much wisdom in the body, and bring the body and the mind together, and then make space for the heart in all of that. You know, in the Kabbalah, my background is Jewish. They talk about the 3 strands being body, heart, mind, and take one of those out and you're left without the light of the soul. So very important that the connection between all those 3. So I was deeply fascinated by the way you were describing. You were talking about relationship and so many things that Susanna, my wife, and we were there going, yes, yes, yes.
The feeling's entirely mutual. I found your presentation immensely interesting. I've had an interest in shamanism for a long time, actually. In fact, I went on a 3-week shamanic holiday back in 2001 to Peru, and it was led by my dear friend Stephen Mulhern, who runs a retreat centre in Scotland called Lendrick Lodge, and he's a shamanic teacher. And there was a group of us who went to Peru for I think it was just under 3 weeks. We did the Inca Trail, but we did 4 days camping up through the cloud forest. But we also did an ayahuasca ceremony.
Oh la la!
and that was in a place called Sacsayhuaman. And it was just, we had some jungle shaman who came and assisted and did it. And I had an amazing experience. At one point, I was looking up at the stars, and the stars morphed into little symbols, and I could see them. And what was astonishing is I could then read the symbols, and I wrote it down in my diary, and it said that the symbols in the stars actually said, there is nothing outside of you. The entire world is a projection of your thoughts, your feelings, your hopes and dreams. You need no special tools or to heal or to create. All you ever have to do is believe. And I've never forgotten that, because I wrote it down. I've read it hundreds of times over the years. And what was weird, one, that I could read it, but also that I knew that I had written those words in another time and place. And that's what was clear to me in the ayahuasca ceremony, is that I had written those words in some other time and place, and I was reading my own book, if you like, in the stars. Yeah. And I thought so I've always had this interest in shamanism.
It's amazing, you know, and as you know, that particular medicine has become very fashionable, and as in most things that we Westerners do, it's becoming rather consumed with you know, I'm very, very passionate about people who are working with that medicine. You know, the indigenous people who we work with, and we take groups of people to visit the Achuar and the Zapara people in their territories in the Amazon in Ecuador, whose land and culture is threatened. And they tell us, you know, that indigenous people, and I imagine this was true for you, would probably only work with that medicine 4 or 5 times in the whole of their life. Because when they receive a vision like the one you received, which is such an instruction, that their understanding is you then have to do the work to make that your everyday reality.
Yeah.
Once you've done that, okay, come back for your next lesson.
Yeah.
But don't come back for another vision before you've done the work to ground the vision you just got. And, you know,
Yeah.
I noticed that, unfortunately, in our world, in the way that we just consume everything, it's like, you know, here's the next thing that we can take as much of as we can. And so often that medicine is being used very much with, you know, what can I have? What can I get? What can I hear? With very little awareness of where's this coming from, and what do the people whose tradition this is, what do they need from me? So
Fascinating.
yeah, so we're very passionate about,
Yeah.
we take a group of people once every couple of years to
Yeah.
the Amazon to meet the people, to be in that environment, to have their experience, and then to go away and work with it. But
Yeah.
also part of the trip is learning to see the forest in the way that the indigenous people see it. And in that respect, then deeply understanding why it's so important that Amazon rainforest stands. It's not
Yeah.
important for those people, but for our species, that we have good lungs working well, producing oxygen. And
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
yeah,
You know, in fact, I would say that that experience I had was 2 years before I started writing my first book. And you could say in some way over my 9 books so far, and the one that I'm working on right now, I've really been piecing together a scientific explanation for the words that I saw
yeah.
written there. So that's kind of fascinating, actually.
It's beautiful, and I think that bridge is so important. You know, when we have shamanic experiences or any kind of spiritual experiences that are rooted in traditions of other cultures, which I completely, you know, my whole journey, I've been very blessed to work with shamans and traditions from all around the world. I've always felt that the task is not then to take on that culture or to take on the symbols of that culture, but to translate those experiences into language, which then makes it medicine within our own culture. And within our own culture, our own shamanic traditions were not, you know, they didn't survive the Middle Ages very well. You know, they were pretty much put underground. So we have to recreate our own shamanic traditions. And for us, the key to that is body. Because, you know, as a culture, we're so far away from the body on a day-to-day basis. You know, I heard somebody describing it as the body is a vehicle to get my head from one meeting to the next, which,
Well,
you know, it's not a bad vehicle to have, but at the same time, we miss so much of the richness or the creativity.
yeah.
And I know you know what I'm talking about because I've seen you dance.
Yeah. What I found when we first met at the I Can Do It conference in Birmingham, I was actually struck by the clarity that you explained these kind of concepts. It was so clear and lucid that it was so easy to grasp. And even you did this meditation, and you were just tapping on a little drum. And I found that was absolutely profound. One of the most profound meditation experiences I've had, actually, at a conference event. And I felt it was a lot to do with the way that you kept tapping on the drum. I mean, what was that? What was the purpose of that?
I mean, that's a really great question. You know, the drum is the most ancient shamanic tool, and it's that repetition of heartbeat of at a particular rhythm. 6 or 7 minutes of that basically changes your brain state.
Yeah, I could feel that.
Yeah, there's quite some research about that. I think it basically activates theta brain waves, and it just wakes up a certain more open state of mind where you're able to see a little bit more clearly or sense a little bit more clearly underneath the internal dialogue. So it smooths out that internal dialogue and opens the door to a deeper mind, an embodied mind, an emotional mind where we feel what's happening. And so, you know, and like many people, I got a drum very early on in my journey, but I had no idea really what it was for. And I was lucky enough to meet and work with a man called Biko Penta. I tell the story of meeting him in the book that I wrote last year. And he was a Sami shaman. And for him, the drum, and for the Sami people, the drum is really the heart and soul of that tradition. And one time I was with him on a fjord in Norway, and he said, can I just have a look at your drum? I said, sure, please have a look. And he picked up my drum, and it's that one right there, just there. That's been with me a long time. And he picked it up, and then he stood still for a while, and he looked at the fjord, and he looked at the sky, and he listened, and then he banged it once. And I was watching him going, what on earth is he doing? And then he sat still for another 10 minutes, banged it again. This went on for about 3 or 4 hours. And I was sat there like wondering what on earth he was doing. Then he came up to me and he said, look, Yakov, when you hit the drum here, this tone, it opens this kind of connection to the nature around you. This over here on this part of the skin, this is much more grounding. This you shouldn't play in after the sunset. And I was like, how do you know? And he said, well, you just have to listen. And that's the problem with you people. You've forgotten how to listen. You know how to make a lot of noise. You can pick up that drum and bang it all you like, but you're not listening. And so from that day on, my relationship with the drum was very, very different. And so the drum is it's a journey tool, and I'd be very interested to see if you ever did any research on what the drum actually does, what rhythm actually does.
Yeah, I hadn't. I found it just really fascinating, especially when you did that drumming process during the conference. I hadn't really ever researched anything in the past, but I'm curious now, because it was such a really powerful. I felt really calm, but very expanded and very connected. Yeah, is the feeling that I got.
Yeah, well, it's the drum, and it's the relationship with that drum. That particular drum I've been traveling with for 9 years. It's been all over the world with me, and it's like any instrument. If you know how to, any tool is useless unless you really learn how to use it well. And I've given a lot of attention to that, and as I said, I had a really good teacher, but at the same time, it's not difficult to learn to listen. It's just a matter of, and the thing about the drum is, if you play it and you play it for long enough, it opens up a way of listening. It reminds us in a way how to listen. And it's a wonderful tool, and put that together with a little bit of movement and a little bit of imagination, you've got a potent blend, which is the work that we call movement medicine. And I know what that's about.
Yeah, but I've written a lot and spoken a lot in talks and stuff about how physical movement and physical posture directly impacts brain circuits. In fact, when I was working on a book called I Heart Me a few years ago, and it was the reason I wrote the book is because I was struggling with my own self-esteem or self-love, not the external stuff. Many people have external self-esteem, which is all about your successes and achievements, but the internal stuff is that inner sense of your own worthiness and value. And I was really severely lacking in that. And one of the great breakthroughs I got was understanding this bi-directional relationship between the movement of the body, how you hold and move your body, and the state of the brain. And as I learned to stand up straight and to move my body in a way that says I have an inner sense of worthiness and value, and hold that posture and movement and style of movement, it began to rapidly change how I felt. And I did a wee bit of research into that and realized that what that does, as you keep adjusting the muscles and moving them in a new way, it begins to literally shape brain circuits in a way that literally wires that feeling into your nervous system. So that's why one of the reasons I love what you do.
Wow, it's fantastic to hear. There's so much in what you just said. I'm really touched by the thing about inner self-worth as opposed to outer achievement or worth that is given to you through your positional power, what you've achieved in the world. And how, I notice in the work we do over the years that the thing that is most important in terms of people being able to integrate peak experiences, or, you know, the kind of inspiration you might get on a workshop or in some kind of meditation retreat, to be able to integrate it. The key to it is updating your self story. In other words, if you've had a peak experience, but your self-talk is still, I'm not okay, I'm not good enough, which is it's the disease of the industrial age. You know, because it suits business for us to feel like there's something deeply wrong with me, lacking, that's going to be fulfilled by a new something. That disease is so prevalent, and to do that work of changing your body and changing your story, and actually updating the reality of who you are now, as opposed to who you felt you were, or what you heard so often as a child or in school or in education. It's so important, and it's great for me to, this is one of the things I loved, and that, you know, we've got your books on order, is the amount of really useful research that backs up, in a way, shamanic knowledge that's both ancient and modern. But that's what I love in terms of making that bridge, that you've really looked for the science that helps us to understand why it's a good idea to get up in the morning, put on some music and jiggle yourself around for 5 minutes and tell yourself you're okay. And it's because, you know, that's the biggest challenge for people, is like, have an experience, go to a workshop, but go home, and then Monday to Friday, just spend 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, just moving your body to a bit of rhythm and saying, I'm okay. Or we call them incantations. These are, you know, distilled new thoughts, you know, to replace your internal dialogue with a more updated soundtrack, basically.
And it's great because this is just using different language. It's the same stuff we've heard, the incantations, affirmations, prayers, you know, positive self-talk. And the reason why these things have been around for a long time is because they really work. And they're very, very powerful. And I think we sometimes forget just how powerful and important some of these things are. I mean, I try to do little victory dances and jiggle about every day, because I understand the profound effect it has, just how I hold and move my body, the profound effect that does have on how you feel. And if you're consistent with it, it's very powerful.
What I'm really happy about to hear you say is, because, you know, affirmations by themselves, like repeating the words, it's a good idea. It's a good thing. But if you're able to do that with your body,
to wear them,
and exactly, and then with your heart, like create the feeling in your body by moving it, and finding the place in you where it's already true. We talk about that as being a seed that you water every day, so it becomes a really strong tree in your garden, and you practice that until it becomes the dominant thought pattern, or the new default mode, which is much more healthy. So it's fantastic that we in a way, we've discovered so many things through different routes, but ended up here we are in this conversation where we can understand each other, PhD and Shaman, and really make a connection. And
it's wonderful.
And I'm so grateful. I think we'll probably bring this dialogue to an end, sir, because otherwise people, you know, have busy lives, they'll never have the chance to watch it. And I love them to be able to receive the gems that you've dropped in here, David. And really thank you so much for taking the time to join us. You'll see across the bottom of the screen now David's website, where you can find his books, and I'll also put mine there for your community too, David, if any of them are interested in finding about what we're doing.
Fantastic. Well, it's been a real pleasure having this dialogue with you this morning.
Well, likewise, and I look forward to many more. I have a feeling that there's some work we might need to do together.